Welcome back to the services here in Irving, Texas of the Congregation of Yahweh. I was making an announcement to the congregation here that I've bought some land up in Paris, Texas. That's where I now live. And that my intent is to develop part of it for the purpose of a feast site so that we don't have to go through this hassle every year of trying to find a place or to keep a place or have the prices go up and everything. So keep that in mind. We're going into one of my favorite books. Most people won't, why you say it's favorite? Well, it gets into a few things when we get over toward the end of it that we're really going to have a long discussion on. But starting out with in the book of Deuteronomy, so you can get there. I have a King James, well, it's actually New King James study Bible, second edition, and it has an introduction to each chapter of each book of the Bible. And it has an introduction here to Deuteronomy that I found very interesting. Deuteronomy is one of the most significant books in the Old Testament, judging from the number of quotations or citations of Deuteronomy in the New Testament. So when all these people started talking about the law is done away with, then why is the very person that they worship, Jesus, or Yeshua in our case, quoting from the law? Well, one reason there was only one scroll, the Torah. There was no New Testament. They had some of the prophets, but that was it. The main one is this. So where else would he? And then I got another thing is, well, who was with Moses at Mount Sinai when all this was written down? It was, in the Old Testament he's called Yahweh, in the New Testament he's called Yeshua. But it's the same Elohim. The word Elohim is plural. No matter what anybody wants to tell you, the Worldwide Church of God used to call it a majestic plural or something like that. Or uniplural. Uniplural. Una meaning one. Well, how can you have a one and it be plural? But anyway, that's another day. But for a lot of those that are out on here or watch this later, I want to point out to you that during the time of the Messiah, this was a very active part of his life and should be a part of our life. It goes on here. Its influence has been extremely great. According to the United Bible Society's Greek New Testament, Deuteronomy is quoted or cited 195 times in the New Testament, exceeded only by references to number 1, Psalms, number 2, Isaiah, number 3, Genesis, and number 4, Exodus. So, in that order, based on the number of manuscripts of the individual Old Testament books found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, Deuteronomy was one of the 5 most influential works at Qumran. Thus far, there are 27 manuscripts of Psalms, 24 of Deuteronomy, 18 of Isaiah, and 15 of Genesis and Exodus. 3 times, Yeshua, I'm going to put Yeshua instead of Jesus, what they have here, found strength in Deuteronomy to turn back Satan's tempting. Remember Matthew 4, 1 through 11 is equivalent to Deuteronomy 6:13, 6:16, and 8:3. When asked which commandment was greatest, Matthew 22:36 and 37, he quoted Deuteronomy 6:5 in reply. We'll get to that, not this time, next time. Deuteronomy is also a treasure chest of theological concepts that have influenced the religious thoughts and life of ancient Israel, Judeans, and Christians down through the ages. These concepts include the concept of creed, that's Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5, is the creed of Israel known as the Shema. Hear, O Israel. Okay? The words were to be upon the hearts of the Israelites who were to teach them diligently to their children. The words were to be found for a sign on the hand and as frontlets between the eyes. They were to be written on the doorposts of the house and on the gates. Yeshua took the words of 6:5 as the first and greatest commandment in Matthew 22:37. Number 2, the second concept of the God who acts permeates the book. The historical acts of Yahweh become a basic, they actually say Yahweh in this book, become a basic part of the book's viewpoint, particularly as these acts relate to the claims that Yahweh makes on the Israelites, both at that moment and after they entered the land of promise. Moses reminds them of what Yahweh did because of Baal Peor. That's in chapter 4, verse 3. And Johannes got close to that too. Which is to instruct future behavior in the promised land, verse 5. The third is the election of Israel based on the call of Abraham, referring to Genesis 12:1 through 3, where Elohim's promise is directed to the seed or descendants of Abraham. The word most often used to set forth the doctrine of election in the Old Testament is the verb bakar, to choose. It occurs quite frequently in Deuteronomy 30 times. Number 4, another major thought is that of the covenant relationship. A people redeemed from slavery and bound to their Elohim by a covenant needed some guidelines for a happy life and fellowship with Elohim and with one another. And he goes on from there. I'm just giving you the basic. It also talks about the historical settings, because this is 38 years after they had refused to enter the promised land the first time. We're down to those last days of that. So in Gill's commentary, it has an introduction. This book is sometimes called Ele Hade Barim, from the words which it begins, and sometimes by the Jews as the Mishneh Torah, the repetition of the law. And so in the Syriac version, with which agrees the Arabic title of it, and when the Greeks, and we after them, call it Deuteronomy, it is not to be understood of a second, a new or another law, but the law formerly delivered, being delivered a second time, but now repeated, and also more largely explained, to which are likewise added several particular laws, instructions, and directions, all of which were necessary on account of the people of Israel, who are now a new generation that were either not born or not at an age to hear and understand the law when given on Mount Sinai. The men that heard it there being all dead, excepting for a few, and you can name the two in particular.
Joshua and Caleb.
Yep, Joshua and Caleb. And these people were also now about to enter into the land of Canaan, and also all of the Levites. None of them were affected by the 40-year death sentence, which they were to enjoy as long as they kept the law of Elohim and no longer. And therefore it was proper that they should be reminded of it. And besides, Moses was now about to leave them, and having a hearty desire after their welfare. Well, he spent these 40 years with these people. So he was really concerned. It's like having kids.
Yeah.
You think of the generations of kids that he came in contact within the Israelites, and he has concern for them, knowing how much they rebelled while he was leading them, and what would happen after he no longer was a leader of the Israelites. He said, and no longer says, which they were to enjoy as long as they kept the law of Elohim and no longer. And therefore it was proper they should be reminded of it. And besides, Moses was now about to leave them, and having a hearty desire after their welfare, spends the little time he had with them by inculcating into them and impressing on them the laws of Elohim, and in opening and explaining them to them and enforcing them on them, which were to be ruled, the rule of their obedience, on which their civil happiness depended. Barnes notes in an introduction to Deuteronomy, the bulk of Deuteronomy consists of addresses spoken within the space of 40 days. I'd always tried to figure out with Yeshua and only being with the Israelites for 40 days leading up to Pentecost. Well, there's another 40 days. And beginning on the first day of the 11th month in the 40th year. So we're down to that last of the 40th year. Clark's commentary says, we have borrowed the name of this book, as in former cases, from the Vulgate Latin Deuteronomium, as the Vulgate has done from the Greek version of the Septuagint, which is a compound term literally signifying the second law, because it seems to contain a repetition of the preceding laws, from which circumstance it has been termed by the rabbis Mishneh, the iteration or doubling. In other words, being repeated the second time. So you have all that's going into this. So that's why we're going to go over a lot of things that already have been read, but we're going to have it as basically Moses gives it, let's see, I can't think of the right word, when you stand and do a speech without any notes.
Extemporaneously?
Huh?
Extemporaneously?
Extemporaneous. So Moses is about to give an extemporaneous recital of the laws that Yahweh had given him. A retelling of all the discussions Moses had with Yahweh in the wilderness during their 40 years of wandering. Because it wasn't just Moses show up every now and then. He and Yahweh were in pretty well close to contact. You know, just like Adam and Eve during the early days. You know, when Yahweh would come down and walk with them. Yahweh was in contact with Moses. I mean, Moses knew exactly what Yahweh's intents were, how he felt about things, and his responses. Going with me to Deuteronomy 1:1. These are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel beyond Jordan in the wilderness, in the Arabah over against Suph, between Paran, Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dissahab. A lot of the commentaries on this, says it's not necessary that he actually spoke to where everybody could hear. Because you think about how many people were there with him, scattered, and they're scattered. We're not talking about, they were scattered for 20 or 30 miles. So you wouldn't be able to, you know, I got good lungs, as you well know, but I don't think Moses had that kind of lungs. And basically what they point out is more likely what happened here was the heads of the families came into a conference in which Moses is now telling them all of this, that they're then to go back and to repeat and to bring everybody up to speed. The Arabah. This is basically an area that's the valley that's between the mountains in Israel and the mountain in modern day Israel and the mountains in modern day Jordan. The valley that runs from the Kinnereth, or the Sea of Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and then past the Dead Sea all the way down to the Gulf of Aqaba, or Eilat today, on the north end of the Red Sea. These are, let's see, make sure I got those notes right. Verse 2 of Deuteronomy 1. It is 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Verse 3. In the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, Moses spoke to the children of Israel according to all that Yahweh had given him in commandment to them. After he had struck Sihon, the king of the Amorites, that's the battles that took place for the previous 2 years, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth at Edrei. I've been in the area of what they call Bashan. It's a beautiful part of northern Jordan, along the Israeli, Jordan, and Syrian border. Beyond verse 5, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, so that gives you what they called the area at the time, Moab, Moses began to declare this law, saying, Yahweh, our Elohim, spoke to us in Horeb, saying, you have lived long enough at this mountain. So the time had run out. They had been moving around and around the mountain, what we call Sinai area. And now it was time to turn. In verse 7, turn and take your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all the places near there in the Arabah, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the south by the seashore, in the land of the Canaanites, and in Lebanon as far as the great river and the river Euphrates. That was a part of the property that was Yahweh told Abraham that his descendants would inherit. Verse 8, behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them and to their offspring after them. Verse 9, I spoke to you at the time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. This is Moses. And verse 10, and Yahweh your Elohim has multiplied you. And behold, you are today as the stars of the sky for multitude. So, in that 40 years, they still had kids. And so, all of those men that died were being replaced by the new generations that came along. And you've got to think, basically it was all those 20 and older. So 19 survived. So it's been 40 years. They're now almost 60 years old. And all they've ever known is that wilderness out there. Now they're coming into a time that they're actually going to inherit what Yahweh had promised all along. And then he goes on and says in verse 11, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, make you 1,000 times as many as you are, and bless you as he has promised you. Verse 12, how can I myself, how can I myself alone bear your problems, your burdens, and your strife? Moses is now, approaching 120 years old? Let's put it this way, I'm only approaching 74 years old. And that would have meant, if I had been Moses, I got another 6 years before we run out of time on this, and I'm not too sure how well I would hold up, much less be coming up on the age of 114, whatever, or being, almost 120 years of age. I'd like to live that long. I'm just not sure this old body of mine will hang in there for that long. Yes?
Yeah. I find it coincidental that, in Genesis, when Yahweh said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, and his days shall be 120 years old. That's how old Moses is.
Yeah, Moses is, yeah. What was Genesis what?
6:3.
Genesis 6:3 is talking about, Yahweh was setting the age limit of 120. And here we have Moses approaching 120. And I think at this time, Joshua was probably about 80. I think that's the approximate age. I may be wrong. It goes on here, it says, verse 13 of Deuteronomy 1, take wise men of understanding, okay, and well known according to your tribes, and I will make them heads over you. So each tribe was to have somebody that would represent them, that was to be basically the leader of that tribe. In verse 14, you answered it and said, the thing which you have spoken is good to do. And that's what they did. Captains of 10s, captains of 50s, captains of 100s, captains of 1,000 type thing. To give a order to everything that's going on. He says, verse 15, so I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains of 1,000s, captains of 100s, and captains of 50s, and captains of 10s, and officers according to your tribes. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. My mind runs sometimes in gallops. Verse 16, I command your judges at that time, saying, hear cases between your brothers, and judge righteously between a man and his brother, and the foreigner who is living with him. So he's addressing not only what's going to happen between various members of each tribe, but he's also talking about all the people that may come into Israel with them, including some of the ones that left Egypt with them, and those that have joined themselves together with them, and those that later on will come into the land because it will be so plentiful, and everything that Yahweh blesses. Verse 17, you shall not sow or shall not show partiality in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike. Just because somebody's rich doesn't give them any special privileges. It should all be the same judgment, whether they be rich or poor. You shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is of Elohim. That's basically what it's saying. That if you do it according to this law, you're doing it according to what Yahweh has said is to be the judgment. It's not your judgment. You're just the person who's supposed to be listening to the case and using what Yahweh said to make the judgment. Okay? The case that is too hard for you, and you shall bring to me, to Moses, and I will hear it. Verse 18, I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. Verse 19, we traveled from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness which you saw, by the way of the hill to the hill country of the Amorites, as Yahweh your Elohim commanded us, and we came to Kadesh Barnea. Kadesh Barnea is on at the end of, I can't think of it. Anyway, the southern part of Israel is in the southern part near the Sinai, the Egyptian Sinai. So, they'd come that part. Now they'd moved from there, swung around, and they're coming up the east side of the Jordan River. Verse 20, I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites, which Yahweh your Elohim gives you. Behold, verse 21, Yahweh your Elohim has set the land before you. Go up, take possession, as Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, has spoken to you. Don't be afraid, neither be dismayed. And then this is going back, and he's rehashing what took place when they chose the spies and sent them into the land to spy it out the first time, because they were on the southern end of it. Okay? Verse 22, you came near to me, every one of you, and said, let's send men before us, that they may search the land for us, and bring back to us the word of which way by which we must go up, and the cities to which we shall come. Verse 23, the thing pleased me well. As Moses said, pleased me well. I took 12 of your men, one man for every tribe. Verse 24, they turned and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and spied it out. Verse 25, they took some of the fruit of the land in their hands and brought it down to us, and brought us word again and said, it is a good land which Yahweh your Elohim gives to us. Verse 26, and yet you wouldn't go up. You rebelled against the commandment of Yahweh your Elohim. You murmured in your tents and said, because Yahweh hated us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Because remember, they found these giants. Verse 28, where are we going up? Our brothers have made our heart melt, saying the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and fortified up to the sky. Moreover, we have seen the sons of Anakim there. That's the giants. Then I said to you, verse 29, don't be terrified. Don't be afraid of him. Yahweh your Elohim, who goes before you, he will fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And in the wilderness, where you have seen how that Yahweh your Elohim bore you, as a man does bear his son, in all the way that you went until you came to this place. In other words, I provided for you, I protected you, I've guided you, and so we've come to this place. So why are you scared? You've seen all the things that we've been able to do. Verse 32, yet in this thing you don't believe Yahweh your Elohim. Suddenly their heart just melts. In verse 33, who went before you on the way to seek out a place for you to pitch your tents, in fire by night, to show you by what way you should go, and in the cloud by day. So, he led them. Made sure that they knew which way to go. Verse 34, Yahweh heard the voice of your words and was angry and swore, saying, surely not one of these men of this evil generation shall sheave the good land which I swore to give to your fathers. Verse 30, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he shall see it. I will give the land that he has trodden on to him and to his children, because he has wholly followed Yahweh. Also Yahweh was angry with me for your sake, saying, Moses said, Yahweh was angry with me for your sake, saying, you shall not go in there. So Moses knows that he's not going into the land. And Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. He's now going to be the new leader. Moreover, your little ones, whom you said would be captured or killed, and your children who today have no knowledge of good or evil, shall go in there. I will give it to them, and they shall possess it. So all of those that have been born in that 40 years, plus all of the 19-year-olds that survived the culling, they're going to go in. You were so worried that something was going to happen to them if you'd have gone in the first time. And yet here, they're fixing to go in without you. Verse 40 of chapter 1 of Deuteronomy. But as for you, turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of Red Sea. That's when he basically said, for 40 years you're going to wander. Verse 41, then you answered and said to me. Now here's what's always been everything with the Israelites. Said to me, we have sinned against Yahweh. We will go up and fight, according to all that Yahweh our Elohim commands us. Every man of you put on his weapons of war and presume to go up into the hill country. Now that they've been told that they can't go in, now they're ready to fight and go in. Okay? And Yahweh said in verse 42, said to me, tell them, don't go up and don't fight, for I am not among you, lest you be struck before your enemies. And so I spoke to you, and you didn't listen, but you rebelled against the commandment of Yahweh and were presumptuous and went up into the hill country. The Amorites who lived in that hill country came out against you and chased you as bees do, and beat you down in Seir, even to Hormah. You returned and wept before Yahweh, but Yahweh didn't listen to your voice, nor turn his ear to you. Yes, Curtis?
Just go show they disobeyed his voice on both ways and their refusal to go in.
Yeah.
When he told them, okay, fine, these kids are going in without you, now they're ready to go. And
Yeah, suddenly they got all kind of new courage to go in.
they found this new courage.
And so as a result of that, some of those that rebelled actually died, didn't even make it through the 40 years at all. They died on that day.
They died in that battle.
And verse 46, so you stayed in Kadesh many days according to the days that you remained. Chapter 2, verse 1, then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness by the way of to the Red Sea, as Yahweh spoke to me, and we encircled Mount Seir many days. The one thing about this is when it talks about wilderness, we're not talking about the desert of New Mexico type thing. We're talking for this area had plants, trees. It even had a certain amount of water and
Shade, trees.
So I mean, it was wilderness in Hebrew. It only talks about land that is not inhabited by humans. Okay, but there were animals. There was, like I said, all the trees, everything that was there. A lot different than what you probably even see today because of the changes that have gone on. Deuteronomy 2:2, Yahweh spoke to me saying, you have encircled this mountain long enough. Turn northward. So they're down in the south. Command the people saying, you are to pass through the border of your brothers, the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. Therefore, be careful. Don't contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land. No, not so much as for the sole of the foot to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau for a possession. He's still a descendant of Abraham. So he has his possession. He's already sitting on it. He's already inherited. You're not getting a dime of your cousin's money or land. Verse 6 of chapter 2, you shall purchase food from them for money. In other words, you don't even take anything that you may eat. You shall also buy water from them for money that you may drink. So they're not to steal. For Yahweh your Elohim has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has known you're walking through his great wilderness these 40 years. Yahweh your Elohim has been with you. You have lack of nothing. Remember all of the gold and jewels that they brought out of Egypt to start with. But also some of the commentaries talks about what they do for 40 years. Because, see, this was a wilderness. But in the areas around here were towns. There were people. And so when it talks about here, you bless you in all the works of your hands. What were they doing? Making things, working with things, selling them to the local populations that they came in contact with. So, bless, you've got money. You can afford to pay them for the food and the water. He goes on here in verse 8 of chapter 2. So we passed by from our brothers, the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir, from the way of the Arabah, from Elat, and from Ezon-Geber, which is in the north end of island on the north end of the Red Sea. We turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. Yahweh said to me, don't bother Moab, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of his land for possession, because I have given Ar to the children of Lot for possession. So Moab is a son or a grandson of Lot. So he's got a possession that you're not to touch. Verse 10, the Emim lived there before, a great and numerous people, and tall as the Anakim. These also are considered to be Rephaim, as the Anakim, but the Moabites call them Emim, giants. The Horites, verse 12, also lived in Seir in the past, but the children of Esau succeeded them. They destroyed them from before them and lived in their place as Israel did to the land of his possession, which Yahweh gave to them. Verse 13, now rise up and cross over the brook Zered. We went over the brook Zered. The days in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we had come over the brook Zered were 38 years. So we still got 2 years to go at this time, until all the generation of the men of war were consumed from the middle of the camp, as Yahweh swore to them. Well, maybe I'm thinking that different, because they haven't passed into any of the land that's going to be given as possession of the tribes of Israel yet. So I guess all of them by this point had died. Verse 15, moreover, Yahweh's hand was against them to destroy them from the middle of the camp until they were consumed. Verse 16, so when all the men of war were consumed and dead among the people, Yahweh spoke to me, saying, you are to pass over Ar, the border of Moab. So now they're fixing to cross into an area that we discussed earlier in other books of the events that are taking place just before they go into the land of across the Jordan into Israel. They spent 2 years on the far side of the Jordan, on the east side of Jordan. And that's where Og and I forgot his name. The two kings on the other side, they involved in. Anyway, I'll just go on from here. Verse 18, you are to pass over Ar, the border of Moab, today. When you come near the border of the children of Ammon, don't bother them, nor contend with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the children of Ammon for possession, because I have given it to the children of Lot, because that's the other son of Lot. Verse 20, that also is considered a land of Rephaim. Rephaim lived there in the past, but the Ammonites called them Zamzumim.
Zamzumim.
A great people, many and tall, as the Anakim. But Yahweh destroyed them from before them, and they succeeded them and lived in their place. As did for the children of Esau who dwelled in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites from before them, and they succeeded them and lived in their place even to this day. And the Avim, who lived in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came out of Caphtor, destroyed them and lived in their place. Rise up, take your journey and pass over the valley of the Arnon. Bob and I both have stood on the bridge over the river Arnon back in 2000 when we were in Jordan. And so that flows into the Dead Sea about midway, to give you an idea. It goes, says, pass over the valley of the Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon, the Amorite, king of Heshbon, that's the other king I couldn't remember, and his land. Begin to possess it and contend with him in battle. Today I will begin to put the dread of you and the fear of you on the peoples who are under the whole sky, who shall hear the report of you, and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. So now they're fixing to build a reputation. And that reputation is they're going to approach each of these cities within in this area on the east side of the Jordan and basically kill every man, woman, and child except for a few that have not, the women who have not laid with a man. Take them as slaves and wives. But at the same time, they take all of the cattle, all of the sheep, and burn everything else. Okay? And they're going to spend 2 years doing this. So in this 2 years, they're really going to build up a reputation of being vicious and non-defeatable. Okay? Verse 26, I send messengers out of the wilderness of Kedemoth to Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass through your land. I will go along by the highway. I will turn neither to the right nor the left. You shall sell me food for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, that I may drink. Just let me pass through on my feet. So first they were going to just pass through peacefully. Yes?
Didn't the Israelites offer terms of peace to the people before they fought with them? And then if they refused terms of course the peace was they would be servitude. And if they refused to be in servitude to them, then they went to battle with them. Am I right or wrong on that?
You know who you're talking about?
The Israelites. Whenever they went into Canaan land, they first would offer them a term of peace, which was servitude. And if they refused to serve them, then they went to battle.
They weren't allowed to enter into any agreement with anyone in the land of Israel.
I thought they had to be servants to them.
No, they were not allowed to enter into any. The only ones that they entered into that type of agreement was ones that did it by subterfuge, claiming to come from a long distance away with all rags and moldy bread and everything. Gibeonites, I think it was.
I think so.
And they were the only ones that they entered into that kind of an arrangement with, only by mistake.
Yeah, they were deceived.
Because they didn't go to Yahweh and ask him, you know, is this true? Is this what we should do? They just entered into the agreement. And they became the ones that haul water and chop wood for the tabernacle. Says here, goes on his verse 29, as the children of Esau who dwelled in Seir, meaning let us pass, as the children of Esau allowed us to pass, and the Moabites who dwelt in Ar did to me, until I pass over the Jordan into the land which Yahweh our Elohim gives us. But Sihon, see here's where it was, Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him. For Yahweh your Elohim hardened his spirit, and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into your hand as it is today. Yahweh said to me, behold, I have begun to deliver up Sihon and his land before you. Begin to possess it, that you may inherit his land. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all of his people, to battle at Jahaz. Yahweh your Elohim delivered him up before us, and we struck him, his sons, and all his people. We took all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed every inhabited city. With the women and the little ones, we left no one remaining. So in this case, they didn't leave anyone remaining. Only the livestock we took for plunder for ourselves, with the plunder of the cities which we had taken. From Aurora, this was the village that was on the Arnon River, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, and the city that is in the valley, even to Gilead. There was not a city too high for us, and Yahweh our Elohim delivered up all before us. That means basically from down about midways of the Dead Sea all the way up into the northern and the edge of Syria and Jordan, and up near the Sea of Galilee. All of those on that side of the town, this is what they did to it. Verse 37, only to the land of the children of Ammon you didn't come near, all the banks of the river of the Jabbok, which is a river that comes in today at the south end of the Sea of Kinneret, or the Sea of Galilee. It empties into the Jordan River. And the cities of the hill country, wherever Yahweh our Elohim forbade us. Chapter 3, verse 1. Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan. Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And Yahweh said, so there wasn't even an offer of peace, it looks like here. Yahweh said, don't fear him, for I have delivered him with all of his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon. So Yahweh our Elohim delivered into your hand Og, also the king of Bashan, and all of his people. We struck him until no one was left to him remaining. We took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take for them. Listen to this, 60 cities, all the region of the Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, in addition to a great many villages without walls. We utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying every inhabited city with the women and the little ones. But all the livestock and the plunder of the cities we took for plunder for ourselves. We took the land at that time out of the hand of the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, from the valley of the Arnon to Mount Hermon. Now you're aware.
Wow, that's,
Mount Hermon is the northernmost point in Israel today.
yeah.
It's actually about 30 miles from Damascus, Syria, that area in there. The Sidonians, verse 9 of chapter 3, called Hermon Sirion, and the Amorites called it Senir. We took all the cities of the plain, and all Gilead, and all Bashan, to Selakoth and Adri, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bedstead was the bedstead of iron, is it in Rabbah of the children of Ammon. It was 9 cubits, so that meant 12 feet. Yes.
I found that Bible verse I was looking for. It's in Deuteronomy 20. It says, when you come nigh to a city to fight against it, you shall proclaim peace to it. If it shall make peace with thee, then all of the people shall be tributaries and serve thee. But if it make no peace, you shall make war against it and besiege it. He goes on.
Yeah, I was just going about what was
That,
Yahweh
Deuteronomy
commanded.
20, starting in verse 10.
Deuteronomy 20, verse 10 is what Tony was talking about.
It's if they're going to war with them.
Huh?
It says when they're about to go to war with them.
But he was showing here with the Og, the king of Bashan, he was also a giant in his own thing, because he had a bed that's 12 foot long and 6 feet wide, after the cubit of a man. This land, verse 12, we took in possession at that time from Aurora, which is by the valley of the Arnon, and half the hill country of Gilead and its cities I gave to the Reubenites and to the Gadites. So that's the first ones to inherit. And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh, all the region of the Argob, even all Bashan. The same is called the land of Rephaim. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Argob to the border of the Geshurites and the Maachites, and called them even Bashan after his own name, Havot Jair, to this day, or Havot Yar. I gave Gilead to Machir. To the Reubenites and to the Gadites I gave from Gilead even to the valley of the Arnon, the middle of the valley and its border, even to the river Jabbok, which is the border of the children of Ammon. The Arabah also, and the Jordan and its border, from the Kinneret even to the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, under the slopes of Pisgah, eastward. I commanded you at that time, saying, Yahweh your Elohim has given you this land to possess it. You shall pass over armed before your brothers, the children of Israel, all the men of valor. In other words, in order to inherit this land on the east side, they had to go over with their brothers on the west side and help them fight the Canaanites and to claim the land. Then they could come home. But they left their wives, let's see, verse 19, but your wives and your little ones and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall live in your cities which I have given you, until Yahweh gives rest to your brothers, as to you. They also possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim gives them beyond the Jordan. Then you shall each return to his own possession, which I have given you. I commanded Joshua, verse 21, at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all that Yahweh your Elohim has done to these two kings. So shall Yahweh do to all the kingdoms where you go over. So when you enter the land, this is also what's going to happen to them. You shall not fear them, for Yahweh your Elohim himself fights for you. I begged Yahweh at that time, saying, Adonai Yahweh, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what or singular, is there in heaven or in earth that can do works like yours and mighty acts like yours? Please let me go over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that fine mountain and Lebanon. Moses is making his last plea to Yahweh. Please just have mercy on me at this time and let me go over. But Yahweh, verse 26, was angry with me for your sakes. Actually, he was angry for what he did when he took and wrapped that rock and didn't listen to me. Yahweh said to me, let this satisfy you. Speak no more to me of this matter. In other words, this is finished. And it says, verse 27, go up to the mount, to the top of Pisgah, and lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and see with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. So he's going up to a high area that he can see into Israel. I've been on what is now called Mount Nebo over on the Jordanian side of the Jordan. And unfortunately, on the day we were there, the smog was so thick you couldn't see much past the mountains on the other side of the Jordan. Before that, you're actually supposed to be able to see all the way into Jerusalem.
Well, actually, not would have been Mount. What's the one to the north? On the other side, Mount Olive, and then the one to the north of. But anyway, I was over there the second time. Same deal.
Couldn't see.
Couldn't see. Well, you could see the outline of it.
Well, it was like when we were up at.
Yeah, up on that hill.
Now I'm talking about where we're all up on the north, no, over on the east side on the Mediterranean side. When we got up and was looking down across the valley of Megiddo. Where the prophets of Baal were slaughtered. On that mountain. Anybody here got
a big
Carmel?
Huh?
Carmel.
Mount Carmel.
Mount Carmel. Okay, got it.
We were up there. The same thing was there. You couldn't see across the valley because of the smog that was available. Yes, David?
No, I was going to answer Tony's question about Deuteronomy 20, 10, when he was talking about they should make peace with them and first before they go to war. In Deuteronomy 20:15, it explains to who they should do that to.
Right.
And it was the tribes that were far off from them.
Outside of Canaan.
Outside of the inheritance of the land.
Okay.
But anybody inside of the inheritance, all of those nations, they should utterly destroy.
Did,
I think
what was
that's
that, 2015?
Yeah, 2015, 2016.
Okay, in Deuteronomy 20:15 and 16, it basically is talking about, it explains what it says in verse 10 to the effect that it's talking about people outside of the boundary of the land of inheritance were to be treated that way, but the ones inside the land were to be utterly destroyed.
Right.
I think that's a misunderstanding. Well, it said, if they don't make peace, it said that you were to destroy everyone except the women and little men, if you read in verse 14.
Okay.
And so if they didn't make peace and they were far away, you could keep the women and little men.
Right.
But if they didn't make peace and they were in the city, inside the inheritance, you destroyed all of them. But
No, you didn't even make the offer.
But I'm just saying, from my understanding
The
of reading that,
prohibition. I'm trying to think of which, where it is.
You made the
in the
offer
law.
of peace either way, just if they were a far distance away, you could keep the women and children alive.
But in the land, they were not allowed to make any treaties with anybody.
This is Deuteronomy 7.
Deuteronomy 7?
16.
Yeah, I knew.
Also 7.
We just haven't got to it yet.
We'll get to that.
Maybe
Okay.
I'm wrong, but I'm just saying from my reading of that
Yeah.
right there, it seems to be saying that you could keep the women and children alive if they were a far distance, but
Right.
not in
Yes,
the land
far
of Israel.
distance.
Right. Well, see, they weren't allowed to keep any of the ones alive in Moab or in that area on the east side of the Jordan. Yes,
And
Robert.
through what Tony's reading there, see, because Yahweh promised Israel peace on their borders.
Right.
So if they made an offer of peace
Right.
to those outside of the border and they didn't accept that offer of peace, they were supposed to destroy the men who could fight them.
Right.
You
In
know,
order
that would
to
ensure
avoid
the
the
peace.
problems that would come
Yeah,
along.
and it would ensure the peace on the borders.
Yeah.
Well,
That was one peace treaty.
I'm just saying, when you come near to a city to fight against it, proclaim peace to it.
Outside of the inheritance.
Outside the inheritance.
Yeah, I just need to see some more study on that.
Yeah. Okay. I need to go on. Let's
It was
see.
a pretty violent time, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. But see, basically, who owns the land? Who owns everything? Who owns
Yahweh.
everything
Yahweh.
that's out there? So he decides who gets to live where. I know there'd be a lot of people that, we may even get some kickback on this on the internet with all of the millennials that think that, that's just terrible and that he's a mean and vicious God.
Yeah.
But there's one thing about this. This is the same one that the Protestant churches later on, when he is born of the Virgin Mary, it's the same it's the same entity that then is resurrected by the Father, because the Father is not mentioned in the Old Testament. It wasn't until Yeshua came to the New Testament that people were revealed, or I should say the Father was revealed to them.
That was one of the major missions that
Yeah.
Joshua had, was to introduce the Father.
Yeah? Robert?
And remember that when Yahweh made the promise to Abraham, he gave the inhabitants of that land 400 years.
Yeah.
He said until the sins of the Amorites were fulfilled. So obviously they had received a witness, and Yahweh gave them time. So Israel coming into the land, and see people thinking that was Yahweh's judgment against those people when he said, go in and destroy, utterly destroy.
Yes.
Because that was his judgment against the inhabitants of that
Well,
land.
you just look like the effect that Jonah had. What was that, 3 days? To the people of Nineveh,
Yeah.
who didn't know anything about Yahweh. And yet they understood what could happen to them. They probably had a history of what's happened generations before. But anyway, at this point, like you said, they were given 400 years while Israel was in captivity
Right.
to straighten up and to fly right, as such. Because there's another aspect that hits me all the time with this, is that all of these people are descendants of Adam and Eve. They know all of the events that went on in the centuries before. They knew about Yahweh through Adam and Eve and through the first generations and all of those before the flood, and for those after the flood, Noah and all of his descendants. So they've been exposed to this. So they have this knowledge. They just don't want to live by it. And so, even in today's society, people prefer safety, They don't want somebody killing them. They don't want somebody stealing from them. They don't want somebody taking their servants. They don't want somebody to take their husband or wife. They already have this, I guess you could say, innate understanding that these things are all wrong. And then you go on down from there. But also, why did they have gods? Even if they were idols, why did they have them? Because they wanted the same attributes in the society. They wanted to keep the society stable. And I put it to you this way. I'm worried today of how much longer our society is going to last under all of the things that are happening in this world, in this country, around the world. Because, if things continue the way they are, this country ain't going to last another 100 years. It's going to be more like when it says in the days of Noah. We're rapidly approaching it worse than I've ever seen before in my life. I thought I'd seen it back in the late 60s and early 70s when Worldwide was expecting return of the Messiah the first Sunday in January of 1972. And all of the righteous were going to go to the place of safety. I don't think we have a concept in our minds. I don't even really have a concept in my mind of how bad it could be. I can give you the closest example I can think of. Think about being a Jew in Germany or in the countries that were overrun by the German army when they're loaded on the boxcars and sent to the concentration camps for retraining, just like the Chinese are doing with the Uyghurs. They're sending them for retraining. What's the retraining? To break them of the idea of religion. It talks about in the end times that there's going to be a lacking of the word. Well, how can that be? A lacking of the word where it's too dangerous to speak it, to talk about it, because there's somebody going to turn you in to the authorities. Because right now, in this country, we're going to call it the worst time of anti-religion that we've ever been in. Let me go on here and finish this one out. So I don't get the 4. Johan, you got the introduction to 4 today. Let's see here. It says, I'm going to go back to verse 24. Adonai Yahweh, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what El, or God, is there in heaven or in earth that can do works like yours and mighty acts like yours? Please let me go over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that fine mountain and Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes and didn't listen to me. Yahweh said to me, let this satisfy you. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward and see with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But commission Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you shall see. So we stayed in the valley near Beit Peor. See, remember that Beit Peor is where, remember Baal with Balaam and Balak? It's the same area. All of this happened just before they went over. And this leading up to this. And so we've got a number of chapters to go in Deuteronomy. I hope I can hold in there for it. Like I said, I go through spells with this old body, with high blood sugar and things of that nature. And I'm trying right now to come off all of the medications that the doctors have put me on, because when I take them all, I can't think. And I really don't have a lot of bodily strength either. to hold up to all the things that I need to do with this piece of property. Because if something happens that my mom should pass, I will sell the house that we're in right now, and I will use that money to build a place, you know, the tiny homes they talk about, out on that property. Because there's one thing about it, I own it. And other than for paying the taxes, I can't lose it. Okay? So, that was the other support, because with the house, you can lose it just because they raise taxes on it. And thankfully, be thankful for this, land up there, the taxes is almost nil. The taxes on this property, I think in 1 year was like, the 8 acres was like $497. And if you, in this case, if I do any farming on it, that's be as simple as just having somebody come and cut the hay off of it. It can go down to pretty well close to zero, because it's based on the amount of money, the tax on $360 for the whole. It does 13 bales of hay, and we're talking about the round bales. Hallelujah, praise Yahweh. Hallelujah, praise. Hallelujah, Yahshua, praise Yahshua, Yah's salvation. I'll be back in 3 weeks on July the 31st at 3 p.m. because we have a fifth week this month. Live stream will resume next Sabbath at 1 p.m.